right, we are recording and we are going live. All right, good morning, everybody. We're here to do the business of the people. We're here for the purpose of our special call meeting. Madam Clerk, as I understand it, there has been a request for an addition to the agenda. And again, everyone should have received that by way of email. Madam Clerk, if you'll read that into the record, and then we'll get input about adding that to the agenda.
Our addition, today's special call meeting is a motion to approve an official letter of support from the City of Augusta, Georgia, Augusta Commission, which is time sensitive and is a required component in obtaining federal funding for the construction of the new James Brown Arena, requested by Commissioner Ben Hassan.
Is there any objection to adding this to the agenda? All right, without objection. All right, before we go into closed session, let's go ahead and address this matter. Commissioner from the 6th, you want to speak to this?
What we just read into the minutes? No, sir, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. I mean, it's plain and just what it said. It said it's a time-sensitive matter and that they needed it to try to pursue federal funds. And so we just make a motion for, well, you've already got added to consent. I'd like to see us take a vote on it.
All right, yeah. Again, without objection, Madam Clerk, voting to support that, and then we'll move forward with the letter. Voting.
We need a motion, sir.
No move.
Commissioner from the 6th.
Second.
Voting.
From the 6th and from the, and Commissioner Sias, I believe was it. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum, Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Madam Clerk,
Yes, sir.
what was that again?
The motion carried with Mr. Franum out.
Fantastic. He'll be joining us later. All right, Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. We'll request a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of litigation, personnel, and real estate.
So move.
Second.
Second.
Are we voting, sir?
He's muted.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum out, Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Hold on. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to transition now to closed session, and we'll reconvene in just a moment. All right, Attorney Brown. All right. Chair recognizes Attorney Brown.
I will request a motion, Mr. Mayor, to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
So move.
Second.
That's okay. Thank you.
And a second, voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum's out, Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias. Mr. Sias. Okay, he's Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Apparently Commissioner Sias having technical problems. That motion carries with Mr. Franum and Mr. Sias out.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Attorney Brown for the reading of a motion.
I will request a motion to adopt resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Angela Baker Langford in the aggregate amount of $22,000 payable to Ms. Baker Langford and Calvin Roos as her attorney, and to authorize the administrator to disperse the $22,000 waiving Augusta, Georgia Code and Ordinance in conflict for this instance only and for other purposes, and those funds are to come from Risk Management Sheriff Department funds.
So move.
So move.
Got a motion and a second. Commissioner from the 6th and the Commissioner from the 2nd voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Franum's out, Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Attorney Brown for the reading of a motion.
Yes, sir. Our second and final motion would be a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the settlement of all claims by Keaton Daniels in an aggregate amount of $44,000 payable to Keaton Daniels and Durham Bray Law Firm as his attorney, and authorizing the administrator to disperse said $44,000 waiving Augusta, Georgia Code of Ordinance in this instance only, and those funds are to come from Risk Management Environmental Service Funds.
So move.
Second.
That was Mr. Dennis Williams.
And
Hassan.
Ms. Francine Scott.
Scott.
Yes.
Okay.
Voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Franum's out, Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Attorney Brown. I believe that's all the business that's before us at this time.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. All right, the commission special call meeting is adjourned, and we will stand at ease until 1 o'clock. Atlanta Georgia football.
right. We're ready to go here, May 11th, 1 o'clock. Calling public services to order. Ms. Bonner, is there any addition or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll just start with number 1, go top down.
Okay. Item number 1 is a motion to approve the First Amendment to the Standard Aero lease with Augusta Regional Airport.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other further discussions or questions? All right, Ms. Bonner, if we could please vote.
Okay, Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Ms. Bonner, can we skip to number 3?
Yes, sir. Item number 3, Mr. Sherman is in the public space with the applicant.
Ms. Bonner, the public computer is, Natasha's working on that right now.
Okay.
It may be a few minutes. You might want to come back to that one.
Okay, we'll go back to number 2 then.
Item number 2 is a motion to approve directing, planning, and development and the law department to draft language within 90 days, amending current zones to allow for ADUS tiny homes and allow planning and development to begin determining a permit process for this type of affordable housing unit.
Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a motion to approve, as you've indicated in the caption, engaging the planning and law department within 90 days to amend the current zoning. Currently, our zoning ordinance does not allow for accessory dwelling units or for tiny homes. And this would allow planning and development to begin determining, again, the permit process. Late last year, there was a news story about a mother who purchased a tiny home for her daughter to live in on property as we navigated through the pandemic and uncertain financial times that she faced. Our zoning ordinance currently does not allow for this. It doesn't permit accessory dwelling units, again, that we more commonly refer to as tiny homes, to be used for residential purposes. As a result of this, the mother now has what amounts to about a $40,000 shed. Homes, as we know, have quickly become a form of affordable housing and housing that allows older residents to age in place. And it's my hope that we can amend our code to allow the use of these in our city, especially as we look forward to a host of discussions around affordable and workforce housing. That's the intent behind the agenda item. And I believe that this was a conversation, quite frankly, that came up well over a year ago in our planning department. And I'm hopeful that they have continued to work towards trying to get something done with this. But that's what this is a request for.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree that we need to approve this. Let's see if there's any questions from the body. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I second that motion.
Okay, any further questions or discussions? Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, I guess they're probably still not ready, so let's go to number 4.
Item 4 is to request a motion to approve the reimbursement to the contractors, construction companies for overpayment of plan review fees.
Who's going to speak to this issue?
Who requested this item?
Yeah, this was placed on by planning in collaboration with finance, but Mr. Sherman he'll be able to talk to it a little bit more, but it's pretty high level. What we discovered is when, again, being a new administrator, we're looking at every process and activity. And what we noticed is that when we changed some of the regulations and the fee schedule, then during the transition, some of those folks were actually double billed because they were under the old fee schedule in the system, and they had a charge on the new system as well. So to make sure that we rectify that, we want to be able to approve the reimbursement for their overpayments for contractors that were impacted.
And do we know a total dollar figure?
We do. I believe it was.
Yeah, it was $192,106. It's in the financial impact on your agenda item.
Yeah.
Mr. Sherman, would you like to speak further on this?
I believe that actually covers it. So as Mr. Donald was saying, when the increase in the fees were implemented, it was a double charge. We have, for instance, 133 fees that were updated. All of the fees except for 5, the plan review fees, were turned off when we went to the new fee structure. So consequently, since we began the increase in fees back in October of 19, it was a double charge for the plan review. This is commercial buildings, apartments. So we collected roughly 499,000. We overcharged 192. So the funds are available to reimburse the applicants.
Okay. Kyle's going to get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Ms. Bonner, if we could please vote.
Mr. Tranum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Item number 5 is to approve the minutes of the Public Services Committee held on April 27th.
Give me a
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Please vote, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Are we ready for the public space ready, Mr. Sherman?
Well, I was down there and it was not working, so I ran
Okay.
upstairs.
Okay.
If you give me a couple of minutes, I'll go back down and see if our applicant is in.
Well, we'll go to item number, Mr. Chairman, is it okay
Yeah.
we move to 6?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go to 6.
Okay. Item number 6 is to discuss and make recommendations for the local redistricting committee process for the 2020 Census Council.
Commissioner Sias.
Thank you, Chairman. First off, I want to say that redistricting is something, as all of us know, occurs every 10 years, and it's an extremely important process. And one of the reasons why I even became a commissioner, to attempt to influence and make some changes in that process. But what I like to do first, Chairman, is have Ms. Lynn Bailey give us an overview of the redistricting process, as she is our executive director of our election board.
Absolutely. Ms. Bailey, are you in?
Good afternoon. I am in.
All right.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me a moment of time to come before the committee to talk about redistricting. It's been on our minds and certainly on the radar for a couple of months now. So I wanted to share with you some expected timelines. Of course, we don't have any data, that you have nothing, we have gotten nowhere near that far, but just to give you an idea of what to expect moving forward and a plan for moving forward. So as we know, redistricting is required by the U.S. Constitution, and the whole idea for redistricting is to take the new population figures after each census, apply it to the existing number of districts, and make those districts fair and of the same size. For instance, we all know that there's been tremendous growth out in the west end of District 3. So we can expect to see some changes there. We all know that District 4 continues to grow greatly, while other districts around the city have not grown as much. And so you'll take all that, put it on a fair playing field, and make the districts of the same size. What we do know, and what you are very well aware of, is there are 8 member districts and then 2 super districts for the Commission and the Board of Education. And of course, we also know that currently both sets of district lines mirror each other. So the Board of Education district lines are the Commission lines, and the Commission lines are the Board of Education lines.
I can have a seat right there.
Typically, in normal years, the data from is provided to the counties around the June timeframe. Is provided from the state to the counties, and we can then begin our process of redistricting. Of course, you know, we all know 2020 was anything but typical. And just like many other things, COVID had a big impact on the collection of census data. So our latest information would indicate that we're going to be about 4 months behind our normal time frame moving into redistricting. So we're likely to not get our data until the October, November timeframe rather than in June. So that really condenses the timeline that we're going to have to work with. And that's part of the reason I wanted to go ahead and get this information out there. And here's the other part. Since the last time we redistricted, the qualifying period and the date of the general primary and nonpartisan election have both changed. The last time we redistricted, qualifying wasn't until the end of May, and the general primary was in July. Now qualifying is set right now for the first full week in March, with the primary coming towards the end of May. That's how the calendar is set right now. So that really does condense our timeline even further, considering that the data will come later and the qualifying period will be earlier. Just to continuing on the process, after the district lines are approved by whatever method we're going to use to do that, they will need to most likely go to the General Assembly in their 2022 session. They will convene the second Monday in January. So I would hope that it would be the goal to have, you know, whatever our districts are going to be, to have them ready to present to the General Assembly as soon as we can to the opening of the legislative session in 2022. You know, the more time that they have with them, then the sooner we can get them approved and get them back to us. Another thing to keep in mind that is different from the last times that we've redistricted is that we are no longer required to submit those type changes to the Department of Justice for pre-clearance. And that process itself added at least another 60-day, if not 75-day window to the process. And that's a window of time that we don't have to work into our calendar. So that does bring us back, give us back a little more of our time. During the past 2 decades, Richmond County and the Board of Education, the legislative delegation, have gotten together to form an ad hoc redistricting committee. And the way the committee was formed, this was back during the 2000 redistricting. We have 4 members of each of those bodies appointed by their respective bodies to come together, and they worked diligently conducting work sessions and also public hearings to educate the public. Took the committee each time probably 4 or 6 weeks to do their work. And it worked very well. All those bodies play a hand in it. We know that the Board of Education's district lines have to flow through the General Assembly, so they play a part of it. We also know that we want, I would think, to continue to have the Commission and the Board of Education district lines mirror each other. So it's important that we have good communication to continue that continuity. So the ad hoc committee, the way it has worked the last 2 go-rounds, again, each one of the bodies would appoint their representatives to the committee. once a committee is formed, the members are identified. It is my belief that the committee should meet as quickly as possible to go ahead and designate and select a chair and a vice chair to talk about and adopt guiding principles that they want to use, such as it's been the practice in the past. The last two committees stated in their guiding principles that they wanted to avoid splitting neighborhoods where they could. They wanted to avoid pairing incumbents where they could. And there were many other guiding principles, but those are two examples of the type of guidelines that need to be set out at the onset. As far as the support goes, we were very fortunate 10 years ago to be in a position to hire a consultant that had recently retired from the state of Georgia's reapportionment office. That was a one-time deal, and we're working now to try to find a consultant, but I don't know that we will. And I will take you back 10 years further to the 2000 redistricting. That effort in 2000 was coordinated between this office and the Information Technology Office and the Law Department, with assistance from the Legislative Reapportionment Services Office in Atlanta. And both processes worked well. So it should not be a huge concern if we don't have our own consultant, as we were able to do 10 years ago. We should still be able to do our work in an efficient way. Again, because the timeline is so tight, it would be my recommendation that we go ahead and start thinking about who the members will be to this committee. Outside of the Augusta Commission, the other two bodies, the legislative delegation and the Board of Education, would need to be notified through some process. And then again, once the members are appointed, we'll get back together and get more into the weeds about the guiding principles and other relevant information for redistricting.
All right. Thank you so much. Commissioner Sias, I'll go back to you.
All right, thank you. First, I want to thank Ms. Bailey for that great presentation. And I've had the pleasure of working with Ms. Bailey over the last couple of decades as we've looked at redistricting. And one of the things I want to caution my colleagues about, particularly from the last 2010 redistricting, we had several, that was done by federal court. And it didn't turn out well for a bunch of neighborhoods in Augusta, and particularly in South Augusta. We had several neighborhoods that were actually split up. We had one or two that was already split, and we ended up with about 6 split. And those are called communities of interest or communities of alike interest. And we need to ensure that we look at the process this time of putting those communities back together. And when I say communities, I'm referring to neighborhoods, so that as they vote for their elected officials, you don't have to have a neighborhood halfway in one district, halfway in another district, and kind of get forgotten about. So I think that's extremely important as we look at that. And I want to mention one other thing. I'm not putting it on the table for discussion today, but that as this process goes through the General Assembly, we are also exploring one other part where it may or may not have to go through the General Assembly. I don't want to bring that up today, but the Law Department is taking a look at that, and we will have that maybe on our next go round when we discuss this. And also, I think it's important, as Ms. Bailey has mentioned, that we start looking at the members. If we end up with the same process over the last couple of redistricting, that we go ahead and get notification to the other bodies, and also this commission select 4 people that they feel will be competent to serve on that ad hoc committee. And that is strictly up to this particular body. And I'll come back later if you don't mind, Chair, but I'll relinquish right now so you can move around.
Absolutely. And I appreciate that. I appreciate your words. I do definitely believe that we need to get ahead of this as quickly as possible and take the lead as much as we can. Any other questions or discussions? Mayor, I think I see your hand up. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the commissioner from the 4th for teeing this conversation up, and our good friend, Lynn Bailey, Elections Board Director. I remember vividly back in the 2010 conversation, this process working effectively, where we engaged both, again, the legislative delegation, the Augusta Commission, and members from the school board. The maps that were worked on were voted on unanimously, in fact. And it was shortly after that that a series of things happened. I think that as we consider how best to move forward, the challenge has already been articulated by Director Bailey, is when we actually get the data from the U.S. Census Bureau that's sent to the state. That right there will impact the ability to convene and to move as expeditiously as possible to actually get maps. So I think identifying a group from the commission and certainly communicating with the school board now would be helpful. I'm confident that members of our legislative delegation are probably having these same conversations, but now is the time for us to do that. And again, thank the commission from the 4th for teeing this conversation up.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or discussions before I turn it back over to Commissioner Sias? Don't see any hands. Commissioner Sias, close us out.
Yes, sir. What I think in the act of moving forward, we don't have to make a decision today, but I think it will be very prudent if we could look at some nominees or volunteers to serve on this ad hoc committee. So as you have with your committee, Chairman, we have the entire commission tuned in. So I would request that you maybe ask for some nominees, and if we can get 4 folks today, we can send that on to the full commission as a recommendation for that committee. No matter which way we go, whether we go the combined ad hoc committee process, or there's another process. And let me just touch that real quick. I don't want to get into it. But in certain cities and municipalities, this process we are doing the last couple of decades has been approved by the General Assembly. There is a possibility that a city can do its own redistricting without General Assembly approval. So I just wanted to lay it out there. That was something I had been looking at for quite a while. So it's not off the table, but the law department is going to give us a better update on that process. And I always thought local home rule was better than anything else. But Mr. Chair, I'd like to see us put some nominees on the table to serve on this committee, our ad hoc committee, so we can be prepared.
All right. Well, let's see if anybody wants to nominate somebody. I would love to be a part of it, but I'm not going to nominate myself. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
I'll nominate
Commissioner
Commissioner Sias to be a part of the committee.
Okay. We got one.
Who did you get? Who do you have?
Turn off mute.
Who do you have?
Off mute. Commissioner
Okay,
Sias.
Oh, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I'll nominate Commissioner Frainer.
Thank you, sir.
I want to do it.
Mr. Johnson, who were you?
I nominated Commissioner Sias.
Sias, okay. Okay.
And
Commissioner
I
Garrett.
nominated Commissioner Frainer.
Okay.
Commissioner Garrett.
Yes, I want to nominate Commissioner Hassan.
No, I was going to make a nomination myself. I appreciate that, but I declined.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. But go
I
ahead.
know. I've been called worse.
Commissioner Hassan.
Yes, I was going to nominate the mayor. As we saw, we got some information from him. Looked like he had a piece of legislation in hand, so I think experience at the table would help us a great deal as well. So I nominate the mayor to be a part of that.
Okay. And Commissioner Sias.
Not saying the mayor shouldn't be a part of it. The mayor has a how can I say, the mayor has a role anyway with that. And the last time the mayor participated at will. And so I'm not opposing the mayor, but I would just think it will be a different, we don't, how can I say this? The mayor can do his input at will. And I think it would be better if we have the mayor in that particular role than as a direct member. And I hope he don't feel like I'm messing with him, but I like to see, if I could, I'd nominate not because he put my name out, but
I
I would
go back,
nominate.
I go back, because it's biased, I go back and accept it. If that's what you're gonna do, I go back and accept the nomination then, if you don't mind. If it's still on the table, Commissioner Garrett.
So let me chime in, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the legislative delegation who participated on this, in fact, the members of the delegation at the time were the late Quincy Murphy, Wayne Howard, and former Representative Barbara Sims. The mayor did not participate at the time. There were 4 members of the Augusta Commission who participated in this process, to include former Commissioner Alvin Mason serving as the chair. He was identified as the chair in our first convening meeting, and this was upstairs when I believe, Madam Clerk, the commission chamber was on the 8th floor, I believe.
Yes,
And so that's again in concert with the comment from the commissioner from the 4th. The mayor was not involved in that.
Okay. So we got Commissioner Hassan is accepted now?
Yeah.
Is that right?
So I'll be happy to serve.
So you.
Yes,
got me
sir,
off.
I accept it now, yes.
Okay, so it's Commissioner Hassan and the mayor? Is that what I'm
No.
hearing?
no, sir.
No
Oh.
mayor.
No, Mayor. He was saying. Yeah. So we have 3, Franum, Sias, and Hassan.
Okay. All right,
I
and
nominate Commissioner from the 3rd, Commissioner Catherine Smith McKnight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in, please?
sure.
I hate to jump in here, but I heard Commissioner Sias in his final comments nominate me for the committee. I think we need to maybe roll back through the list again, just for clarity purposes.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see,
Yeah.
Ms. Bonner, you got?
Mr. Size. Mr. Size.
Hold on, Chair, did you call on me?
I did, and then you said, and then you went over to talking about the mayor and him in the process, and then honestly, I don't know if I thought I heard Commissioner Johnson. I honestly did, but Ms. Bonner didn't say that when we said it.
Well,
Just
if
for
that's the case, yeah, for clarity. If that's
Just for
Mr. Sias, yeah, okay.
Well, just for clarity, yes, I was about to nominate Mr. Johnson. I don't want it to be a controversial issue. No matter whether a person is on that committee or not, there can be some great input from any of us and all of us coming to the committee. I wasn't even a commissioner, and I participated greatly in the redistricting. So that was what I was about to do, but I don't want this to become a controversial issue.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. But I here's the thing. What now? Mr. Williams?
Make a ruling, Chair.
I'm going to rule with like the fact that the body is nominating and he is part of the body, the mayor. So, and I did hear Commissioner Sias say Commissioner Johnson. So I'm going to just go with that, what we heard first, Ms. Bonner.
Okay, so that would be Mr. Franum, Mr. Sias, Mr. Hassan, and Mr. Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the recommendation from the Public Services Committee. Okay.
Is there any further business? Oh, we need a
Can we get
motion.
a motion to that?
Yeah. Can I get a motion to move forward with the names that were selected?
So move.
Second.
Thank
Got
you.
a motion and a second. Voting, Ms.
Okay.
Bonner.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries.
All right,
It's
Ms. Bonner.
unanimous.
Ms. Bonner, I think that concludes public services.
Yes, it does.
Ms. Bonner, Chairman. Oh, Chairman.
Well, I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Oh, you got to do
Alcohol.
you got to do number 3. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. Mr.
Okay.
Sherman,
Yes, so number 3 on your agenda is a new ownership application, AN 21-15, a request by Afted Ahmad
Malik for a retail packaged beer and wine license to be used in connection with Gordon Food Mart LLC located at 2078 Old Savannah Road, District 2, Super District 9. If you'd state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Akhtar Ahmed Malik, and address is 524 Richmond Hill Road West, Augusta, Georgia.
Ms. Bonner, Commissioners, there were no objectors in the chamber. The Sheriff's Office and Planning and Development recommend that this be approved.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second.
Mr. Voting, sir,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, he's muted, sir. He's driving.
He's driving.
Okay, Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, we'll have, the motion carries with Mr. Clark not voting. Okay.
Driving.
And that concludes public services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bonner, let me know when you're ready to go for administrative services.
Yes, sir. We're up, sir.
All right. Administrative service is now in session. The judge is in the courthouse. Listen, Ms. Bonner, are there any deletions or additions?
Yes, sir. We have a request for one addition. It was deferred from our special call meeting on yesterday to discuss, approve, authorizing administration, human resources, and the law department to develop a policy for the recruitment for executive level directors, personnel to include the commission direct reports and bring back at the Tuesday, May 18th, 2021 commission meeting.
Can I add this to the agenda without any objections? And I have one more deletion.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Administrator. Something you want to say?
Yes, the deletion. Yes, sir. I was
Deletion.
just going to highlight the deletion.
Deletion is item number one. We're going to delete item number one from the agenda.
Okay, it's been,
Okay. Also, based on what we've done this morning, if I'm not mistaken, the issue that we handled about trying to get the Coliseum Authority some resources there that a lot of support. I'd like to make sure that we add to this agenda here as an addition to authorize Ms. Bonner to draft the letter so she can get over to the mayor so the mayor can sign it. So I'm gonna add that to this agenda. Is that all fine without any objections?
That's fine,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we addressed that in the special call meeting already. So I don't think you need to add it to this agenda.
Well, I don't think we add about Ms. Bonner drafting the letter, if I'm not mistaken, though. I think unless she has to draft the appropriate letter, if I'm not mistaken.
yes, sir. The motion was just to approve a support letter. It didn't identify who was to draft that letter, but we'll do it and get it over to the mayor's office.
Okay, so you will draft the letter, that's my point, that's my question.
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Thank you, so we don't have to add it, it's just understood that Ms. Bonner gonna draft the letter. Is my committee good with that? No.
We're good.
All right, thank you, sir. Oh, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up a few minutes ago. Any deletions, addition?
No, sir, I'm good.
All righty, thank you, sir. Item number 2, Ms. Bonham.
Item number 2 is award the contract for demolition of 401 Walton Way to Thompson Building Wrecking Company, Inc. of Augusta in the amount of $1,498,500.
Yes. Well, first, I'd like to just make a comment around this, if my colleagues don't mind, and that is, any comments about within the committee or not. But at one time, in the word on the street was that this was going to cost us $1.7 million, and we're going to be about $300,000 over budget. Well, the administrator and his team has gotten it within budget, and that is a good thing. So we need a motion here.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 3, motion
Yeah.
to approve the minutes of the Administrative Services Committee held on April 27th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hassan and Mr. Franum. Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Are we going in order, sir? Mr.
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Chairman?
I'm sorry. Ms.
Okay.
Donald.
Item number 4, presentation by SLA Labs and request from commission letter of support.
Mr. Mayor, this is your agenda item, but we're going to make a few comments, then I'll make comments prior to
Thank
this.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request by SLA Labs, who's an authorized Department of Defense contractor to develop skill bridge training programs. A couple of weeks ago, they reached out requesting a letter of support from the city. They want to talk about that program. And Mr. Chairman, if we can allow Mr. Douglas Weber 5 minutes for a brief presentation.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor. You're welcome. Go ahead.
Jeff, if we can bring Mr. Weber in.
Yes, sir. I'm looking through the waiting room. I don't see that name.
You want to come back to it, Mr. Mayor, if you don't see the name?
We certainly can do that, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay with you. Yeah.
We're down.
Jeff.
Okay, go ahead.
Jeff, you sure you don't see the name?
Can we go to item number 7, Mr. Chairman? That's another presentation. They are in the room, and if we could go to that one, that would be certainly great if we could do that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have concerns about this one, and as I shared with you yesterday. This seems to be a business. I think it ought to go through the procurement process as opposed to making a presentation. I think, as you know, about a couple of years ago, the sole source law was revised. As a matter of fact, you had one of the state representative on behalf of the state that was here and said that what Ms. Sams had put together was one of the best in the state, and she was going to use it as a model. And so with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's appropriate for us to allow them to make a presentation if it is a business and potentially will participate in the process. Because if they make a presentation today and this process goes up through procurement process, they would not be allowed to participate. That's one side of it. Now, if there's any questions about that, I do, because I do have another angle a little different from that as well. Well, I'll go ahead and make my other comment. My other comment, Mr. Mayor, we're doing so much right now in terms of rental assistance. I mean, just yesterday, the minister, we know right now we have about $6.2 million with the United Way. The administrator just sent out yesterday, we have about another $7.1 million coming in for rental assistance. And you both know that is what this is. So in many ways, we're doing what we need to do around that issue right now. But I am concerned, I go back once again, I'm truly concerned about them making a presentation because we're circumventing the procurement process and they intend to participate in that.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your concerns, and you've not articulated this correctly. This group is here to simply do nothing more than present a draft ordinance based on model legislation from other communities. That is the goal that we have today, and only that. This is not a procurement matter. This is not an attempt to sole source. This is, as every one of you have received a set of sample pieces of legislation. That's what the presentation is about. 5 minutes for them to do that.
And so we're just going to draft an ordinance. But what is the ordinance going to be for, if you don't mind?
Again, this is to help families around housing. That's all.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Scott. Commissioner Scott.
Yes, can I hear from Attorney Brown and then Administrator Donald on this issue, please.
I guess they left the building.
No, we're here. Mr. Brown is first. He was unmuted.
I'll defer to you, Administrator. I think it's really procurement you need to hear from.
Yeah, I think, we would have to look at procurement. I would tell you that a presentation does not necessarily fully restrict you from being involved in a procurement. But if they present information that can result in the drafting of a scope of work or something of that nature, it would likely prohibit them from participating in the life cycle of a procurement. So I think that's one item. I think secondly, when you look at the funds that we are putting out on the street, I think the mayor's been a great champion in helping us acquire this first tranche of dollars. And with the second tranche, we have not received the rules, which seem to be a little bit more flexible on what we do for landlords versus only being able to address renters. And so I know that portion of the conversation, we just received the notification of funding and have not received the information regarding the rules specific to that pot of money from Treasury. And so we will be providing an update in the future. I'm not familiar with, at least I don't think I am, SLA Labs. I am familiar with Renter's Choice, and I know that it's a quality organization, but I don't know what they propose to present to the commission. And so I unfortunately can't speak to that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
again,
sir.
if I may, there's been a complete mischaracterization here. As I said, they've sent over, and you all have received either in your notebooks or electronically. This is a presentation about proposed legislation. That's what this is about. But again, the request is simply to hear that. At no point in time have we talked about funding, have we talked about procuring anything. This is not about procuring services. This is about proposed legislation. And so there's a complete mischaracterization on your part about that. That's not what this is about.
Well, Mr. Mayor, when I looked up, and I'm gonna defer to the committee, let the committee make a decision on this, Mr. Mayor. But when I looked up Renter's Choice in terms of beyond just what I had scanned over in the information, I do realize that they have a business model here. But also, my attorney said something also is, why don't we defer to procurement? But what you're also saying is it is just an ordinance. But the administrator did say, well, he didn't believe personally that if a person made a presentation doesn't prevent them from participating in the procurement process. However, if they participate in drafting the ordinance, it becomes a whole color. That's my concern about it, Mr. Mayor. But whatever the will of the committee is fine with me. I have 3 other committee members, and whatever I give, do the benefit of the dollar, let them, whatever they think is best.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to correct that. I didn't think I said ordinance. If I did, I misspoke. I meant scope of work. If it leads to the development of a scope of work, because the scope of work is the procurement tool. I just wanted to make sure if I misspoke, I want to make sure I corrected that.
Procurement available?
Sure, absolutely. Ms. Sams is actually in the room now. She's trying.
Yeah, let's hear from her. Let's hear from Ms. Sams.
I think they're trying to get her in.
Again, I want to state for the record, there's been a complete mischaracterization, Mr. Chairman. At no point in time has there been, nor is that even in your caption, anything as it relates to funding or procurement or scopes of work. This is simply a presentation about proposed legislation. And so we certainly can hear from the procurement director. That has nothing to do with procurement.
Is she in yet?
We're getting her in from that room now.
But Mr. Hassan, what you're saying is that if they present, then come back and try to benefit from it, we would have to cut them off, right?
Well, yeah, but I think, like I said, the mayor, I want to say one thing, but I know for sure from my limited view of it is, it's a dicey situation. I think it's more of a procurement issue, even though they're talking about that today. But like I say, if the will of the committee, if the procurement is not available, I respect my colleagues on the committee. Y'all want to go forward.
Yeah, I would say let's hear it. And if we have to cut them off, then let's do that. What do you think, Ms. Scott?
I couldn't agree with the Mayor Pro Tem more. I mean, at no point in time have we said anything about current services or anything.
You're gonna do it, go ahead.
All right, we're gonna bring those folks in. There's Amal Naik, Jeff, and I think Cassidy Schwartz.
Oh, boy,
I believe Jeff has a presentation to put on the screen. Jeff?
Mr. Ned, how you doing?
Am I there?
You're here, Ms. Sam. We've already allowed them to come into the room. Now you could just be an observer like ourselves, maybe defer to you at the end of the program.
Yes. Okay, sir. I'm here. And let me apologize to you for being a few minutes late. I was listening to you on my telephone.
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
All right, Amal, if you can introduce yourself as well as Cassidy, and you got 5 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. My name is Amal Naik. I'm an attorney in Atlanta at Squire Patton Boggs. I'm joined by my client, Cassidy Schwartz of the company Rhino. I did have the opportunity to listen in a bit to the discussion prior to the presentation. And just to clarify, we are not seeking any procurement dollars or scope of work or anything like that. In fact, this is it's a product that is already legal in Georgia and in Augusta, and what we'd like to do is expand access to it. So let me give you a bit of background, and then hopefully that'll help to explain what it is we're trying to do. And I think really, Mayor, this really fits very well into the discussion of affordable housing. As we see on the slides today, over 49% of Americans do not have $400 saved for an emergency, which is quite a staggering number given how quickly an unexpected expense of $400 could occur. And over 35% of renters find upfront moving costs being obstacles to secure housing. As we all know, if you have to come up with your first month's rent and the first month's security deposit, that's a large cash outlay, and the money just sits in escrow. And it really does no one any good. In fact, over the country, there's $45 billion, which is a staggering amount of money sitting in security deposit escrow accounts across the country. And our estimation is up to $30 million maybe sitting there in Augusta alone. And so what we have done with Renter's Choice, and again, the name of the particular company I represent is Rhino, but there are other companies also in this, and the proposed ordinance would allow certainly any company to participate. We've been able to bring this Renter's Choice movement to places like Cincinnati, Atlanta, Baltimore, Salt Lake City, and Columbus. And there's been some broad support for this because this is a really straightforward and simple product. So essentially, if you're going to rent a home, right, and say your rent is $1,000 a month and the security deposit is $1,000, so you've got to come up with $2,000 on day one. What this does is it allows you, if you would like, to use a low-cost payment of say $5 a month in lieu of tying up your $1,000. So as a result, the property owners are still protected, right? They have the insurance that the security deposit is needed. Property owners get that assurance and protection, but the folks that are trying to rent the property don't have to come up with $1,000. Rather, they can pay $5 a month. And so that we found really opens a lot of doors because, again, a lot of folks just don't have that first month's rent sitting around. And so rather than the money sitting in escrow, what happens is it really, opens up a lot of opportunities to people who may not be sitting on this cash. And it really puts money back in folks' pockets who really need it rather than sitting in escrow. Just to, again, clarify, this is something that is already allowed and regulated and permissible in Georgia and Augusta. It's a private, company. And really a lot of high-end places already use it. So a lot of the high-end rental properties like to use this product because, the security deposit money doesn't really help the property owners. It's sitting in escrow, and they actually prefer this. And so all this proposed legislation would do, and all that is done in other places, is it makes it so that every renter has this option. And so if a renter wants to use the security deposit, by all means they can. But if they don't have the funds, or if they would not want to tie up the money, frankly, it's not just folks that don't have the money. A lot of folks tie up a month's rent. You can obviously invest or utilize it in other forms. And this is just a simple product that allows you to use insurance instead of having the money tied up. And so, as a result, it was passed with, I think it was unanimous, and it was definitely unanimous in Atlanta. It passed unanimously in Cincinnati, and with very little opposition in some other places. We found it to be sort of a common sense solution to unlock some more affordable housing to folks. Certainly happy to take any questions you may have, but we are not looking to participate in procurement activities or anything of the like. It's just really making this option available to consumers.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. Can you kind of take your graph down, please, if you don't mind? Any questions for the gentleman?
I didn't see a presentation.
Sir? Mr. Sides, did I hear you make a comment?
Yeah, I didn't never see it.
Oh, well, we don't see you either, so the feelings are mutual.
Right, you gotta open your eyes.
I said I didn't see the presentation.
Yes, Mr. Sprader, go ahead.
Yeah, so Commissioner, I was not familiar with the renter's choice or the company, but I am familiar with legislation and that process now that it's been presented. I do think that these are a couple of different topics. I've actually didn't know that Mr. Naig was involved with those companies, but have definitely benefited from his legal expertise in passing this type of process in other jurisdictions that has actually been accepted around the country. And so I did want to provide that insight that this legislation is one that's been fairly popular, and the opinions have been that it's been fairly beneficial to residents in the communities that it's been presented in. While I'm not familiar with these companies today, very familiar with that legislation. And I think from an administrative standpoint, in the past, we've seen it be successful.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Let me suggest a motion then to give us opportunity. I won't bring Ms. Sams back in, to give us an opportunity to fully understand exactly what's going on here. And I appreciate the presentation. And can we bring this back, Mr. Mayor, to give us more time to look at this and bring it back in a month, back before the committee cycle, and let the administrator and Ms. Like you said, the legislation, that Ms. Sams take a holistic look at it as well, and we consider doing what we need to do at that particular time. I'd like to see if we can get a motion to that effect.
So move.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bonham.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Let me know when you're ready to go, Ms. Bonham. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a motion to approve directing planning and development, the Land Bank Authority, Housing and Community Development, the Development Authority, and the Downtown Development Authority, and any other relevant departments to provide the commission within 60 days at least 3 recommendations on selling city-owned parcels at a reduced appraised value for the sole purpose of developing affordable housing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, you up.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, if we could take items 5 and 6 together, if you don't mind, they are in fact related. And my commentary on those will be very short because I'd like to just make a few comments and then kick it over to Administrator Donald that could quite frankly just take these and speak to both of them. But as our city rebounds from the pandemic and puts itself in a position for strong growth, it's extremely important for us that we work together to improve our competitiveness as a city, especially as it relates to people who are locating here to Augusta. We want them not only to work and dine in our city, but to live and raise their families as well. And so the goal is to spur development and increase our housing options for those who are looking to live in Augusta, not just the CRSI, but particularly Augusta. And so item 5, the affordable housing for families incentive, as well as workforce housing tax break, are matters that allow us to not only be competitive as a city, but to grow our city and provide a variety of housing options around affordable housing. Much of what we see being built in our community right now is all market rate. The announcement about the Ellis Street development that took place from Ribbon Cut last week was market rate. Here when we look at Beacon Station, market rate, 11th and Telfair, market rate. And so we've got a unique opportunity to bend that arc towards opportunity and justice for folks. And so I would like to, again, because it involves city departments and things, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I want to kick it to the administrator who can just add some comments to what I want to say, and then I'll let him close this out.
Okay, let me say for the record, Mr. Mayor, to your original ask about 5 and 6, but that, I think the committee is fine with that. I'm fine with addressing both of them in a holistic manner. But I will like to make one comment, Mr. Administrator, before you do that. One thing, Mr. Mayor, maybe you can help with this based on this agenda item, number 5 in particular. One of the most challenging words for us ever since we've been here is the word affordability. What does that look like in terms of cost?
Well, the federal government has established affordability as families or individuals not using more than 30% of their income for housing. And so when we look at the challenges in our community, it's important for us to make sure that we've got housing stock available, whether that's single or multifamily, that does not push people beyond having more of their income dedicated to housing so that they can, again, do childcare, groceries, and those other things. That's the goal around affordability. I actually did the numbers on my own house on yesterday, and I'm at 27% of income. So again, I think that's an extremely important number, and this is the number that the feds have used historically when it comes to that.
All right, that's that sky answer, but good. That's a good answer, Mr. Administrator. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one, again, thank you for always allowing me to give input to the commission as you make decisions. I had an opportunity to speak with Mayor Davis a couple of different times, and I think we all know that blight has been very high on his list of priorities, as well as the commission as a whole. And so I think the overall general consensus on these 2 items is in the process of being met, which the mayor referred to. One, the commission has allocated about $4 million, which our public at a 70% rate has supported through SPLOST. And so there's $4 million there, but what you can do with those funds are limited. Through the Biden American Rescue Plan funds that are coming down the pipeline, we've been working with a cross-functional team that not only includes this group, but also Mayor Pro Tem Williams, who has been leading the charge of bringing a blight ordinance. And so on May 26th, as a part of that presentation for the American Rescue Plan, we'll highlight a process for which, with the new blight ordinance, we should be able to provide an incentive for folks to access homes that are currently with the land bank, but also add to the land bank portfolio of homes. The goal, I think, in speaking with the mayor and all of the different partners, including Mayor Pro Tem Williams and others, is to see if we can coordinate a pilot very similar to what is taking place in Macon, where upwards of about 100 homes that are identified and within the land bank, or would be within the land bank, would be redistributed in a way to provide affordable workforce housing to Augusta residents. The mayor gave you I think he would say the 50,000 foot view of affordable housing, but the big picture is that average median income that he referred to as a city, with all the tools in the tool belt that we have, we get to kind of define what our affordable housing process looks like. And so this effort is just the first step. And you know, when you've got an elephant, you can't eat it all at once. You do it one bite at a time. And so the blight ordinance is one bite, and then coming back with an augmentation to our SPLOST efforts is bite 2. I think that's what the mayor is referring to in number 5 and 6. And then we can address defining what affordable housing is for Augusta. And so his proposals, I think the one edit that I would just add is that you place that, and he and I talked about it, he wanted to be very specific about the number of departments and ensuring everyone is involved. But I think our consensus is that it would be directing the administrator to bring it back, and we do so as early as May 26th, but it would probably take additional conversation. And so that's why he's asking for the 90 days. Did I capture that correctly, Mayor Davis?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any more comments, Mr. Mayor, before I ask my other colleagues any comments?
No, the administrator expressed that as well as could have been done.
Okay. Any other comments to my colleagues?
Motion approved 5 and 6.
You want to approve them, or do you want to approve them like that, or as information? Which one are we going to do at this time? Because the administrator is going to do some things and bring it back to us.
I have a question.
Well,
go ahead, Commissioner Sayers.
And this is around the more like it was in item 6. And actually both of them. When we talk about a reduced appraised value, and then we also talk about a property tax incentive. Affordable housing and this kind of thing, we've had many developers around here who process through the community affairs division or whatever that is of the state, where they get these tax incentive through tax credits and things. My question is, are we giving away the bank here? We're talking about selling it to them at under the appraised value, and then we're talking about a tax incentive reduction of property tax to go with. I just want to remind everyone that the base of this, the base structure of this government to run this city is the property tax part. So I just think we need to be very, very aware when we start talking about developing these property tax incentives. One of the things that we discussed at least 2.5, 3 years ago was to do those incentive packages for sewer and water and this kind of stuff that developers run into in doing these projects. I am very reluctant to start down the property tax road. I'm very concerned about that one. So
Well,
I find it difficult on this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, Commissioner Sayers, Commissioner Sayers,
go ahead, go say.
Commissioner, hold on just a minute, please. I want to respond to Commissioner Sayers. Commissioner Sayers, I agree with what you're saying. I think what's happening here, but the administrator and the mayor has come to a consensus about what is going to bring it back. I think the bottom line is they want the same results, may bring up a different method, because I agree like you, that for many of these things, when we're talking about getting us placed on affordable house or whatever, we're giving the $25,000 and the $5,000 to supplement those things. So we're kind of getting them there, but many times the tax incentive won't get them there. So I agree with you. I think we just let the administrator bring his program back. Administrator, before I come back to you, I want to let Commissioner Bobby Williams say something. So my concerns are the same, but I think the administrator and the mayor is going to bring back something. I think we all can live. Commissioner Bobby Williams.
I don't want to give away the bank to the developer.
I agree. I don't disagree.
Okay. Commissioner Sean Franklin made a motion to approve. I'm going to second it. The reason why I'm going to second it is because all we're talking about is research. And that's the same thing about going and bringing information back. We're talking about research. We're not talking about implementing. So if he does the research, he's going to have to bring it back to us anyway before we can vote on it. So that's why I give it a second, sir.
Well, I was thinking and saying that. Let me, Administrator, go ahead and make your comment before I say something.
Yeah, I think that you could, without question, say that you're bringing it forward or receiving it as information that can be passed on to the commission, because the details related to any proposal will start those conversations on May 26th. But I did just want to provide some clarity about who's on first, who's on second, who's on third, similar to baseball. The first thing is, when you talk about the tax incentive, I think that concern that Commissioner Sayers expressed 100% dead on, but that incentivizing is not about the developer. It's more so for the end user and folks who could be negatively impacted through the blight ordinance. It is coming forward soon, and I think Commissioner Williams would tell you that a lot of thought has been put in place to make sure that we incentivize people to keep their properties non-blighted, and for once they are blighted, we incentivize future homeowners, for when we're talking about residential, to take those on. And so that's the process that we're talking about here. Secondly, we want to increase our tax base. And so when you talk about providing a home at a reduced value, you're doing so for residents who can afford homes within that process, but also keep them up. And then number three is that when the focus on these homes are those that are not providing value and not adding to our tax base. So just wanted to make sure we provide that clarity. I know this is just the first conversation, so bringing back the research, the programs, et cetera, I think you guys are right on, and we're moving in the right direction.
Mr. Administrator, to keep it simple, give us what you think this motion should be. We can live with one or the other.
I would ask to.
The attorney got his hand up.
I'm sorry. I would defer to the
I'm
attorney.
sorry. Thank you, Ms. Scott. Commissioner Scott. Attorney Brown.
You already have a motion.
I know.
I was just going to say a couple of things. I think it would be more appropriate to reroute this matter to the guidance of the administrator, as I think you're about to do. I do not think it's appropriate for the governing body to have motions on the agenda that directs authorities. The governing body does not direct the Land Bank or Economic Development or Downtown Development Authority. These are our working partners who have independence that can help us to create incentives, but we cannot treat them like departments. So I do think that the motion that there should not be a motion to approve this as written. I think an alternative motion is to refer this matter to now that you know what the administrator has in mind, to refer this matter to the administrator and to process along the lines of this motion. But just in general.
So Sean, you want to change your motion?
Yeah, motion to approve as just stated by the attorney to bring this back in the days that are represented in each.
Second.
Voting Commissioner Sayers.
We're ready to vote, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
He said Commissioner Sayers. Well, go ahead.
I'm not on your committee, sir.
We know that.
So why y'all calling me?
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Franham,
Yes, ma'am.
and Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously to refer this to the administrator.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Weber is in the waiting room. If it pleases the chairman to come back to item number 4.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Item
Mayor.
number 4
Yes,
is
ma'am.
the presentation from SLA Labs,
Yes.
a request for a letter of support.
Can we bring him in, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we have with us Mr. Doug Weber from SLA Labs for a brief presentation.
Mr. Weber, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me. I'm going to have to disconnect my meeting from you guys. I was listening to all the goings on there. Now, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate everybody having me today. I had a little technical difficulty earlier and I corrected it, so I appreciate you sparing some time for me. I'm with SLA Labs here in Atlanta. We're a nonprofit here in Georgia. We're also a Department of Defense contractor. We work closely with Department of Defense in an area called DoD SkillBridge. It's a.
Am I missing this?
Let me bring up my.
Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber,
Yes.
excuse me a minute, please. Mr. Size, you can't hear?
I can't see it. I can't see it.
Oh,
on here.
okay.
We can't see you. We either. Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Let me see if I can bring up my Google.
Let me try to figure out something here.
Let me bring up my Google Drive. Hopefully we'll be able to see this as I bring it on.
Commissioner Hassan?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Prater.
Once he
Meantime.
brings it up on his end, you
Yes.
want to notify Mr. Lewis to give him access to share his screen, but you just want to do that after he has it pulled up.
Okay.
For
Because
some
I don't
reason,
think he shared the document.
it's not allowing me to share my screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, sir, do you mind
Yes.
if I hop in and help him, Mr.
No, go ahead.
Hassan?
Go ahead.
Sir, once you pull it up on your screen and you have it ready, notify the chairman that you have it up, and then he will direct IT to allow you to share your screen.
Okay, so I've given him access to share. Sir, if Mr. Weber, if you'll click the green share button.
Yeah, okay, very
And
good.
then pick which one you want to share.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for that. Well, it's interesting here. It's not allowing me to. All right, I'll try that. And see if you can. It's
Also, if you share it with Mr. Lewis, then is it okay, Mr. Lewis, if he shares with you and you share?
Yes, sir. I can
Yeah.
email him and then he could reply back to me.
I'm getting an internal error
No issue at all.
on the Zoom box.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
believe that this is the same presentation that was provided to Ms. Bonner. It's in your notebooks. And so again, Mr. Weber, if you just want to talk from your
Yeah,
slides.
I can do
And
that.
they have them. It's the same set of information that's in your notebooks.
That's fine. I can do that. I'm just going to give you some brief history where we started last summer with City of Raleigh, North Carolina, Shaw University, which is an HBCU, and NC State is a research campus, primarily in IT and 5G. We had reached out to the City of Raleigh, North Carolina for an H-1B grant, which we wrote last November. The city was a partner with us with the universities in Raleigh, and so that led us into an opportunity to work at the Department of Defense using our STEM accelerator model, which basically science, technology, engineering, and mathematics is a very hot topic right now. And so the Department of Defense and our firm agreed to stand up a pilot program at SkillBridge to train the veterans that are entering the private sector in 5 strategic sectors, and that was artificial intelligence, 5G, network engineering, cloud, and telemedicine. So what we did with their program is now we're reaching out to some of these surrounding communities around the bases that are in our target area. Our target areas are Fort Gordon, Fort Meade, Huntsville, Alabama is Redstone Arsenal, MacDill Air Force Base in Florida, Jacksonville Navy Yards in Jacksonville, Pensacola Navy Yards in Pensacola, and a few other opportunities, Fort Bragg in North Carolina. So we are reaching out to those local communities with the model of providing a STEM skill-based learning environment or a lab that would be stood up with a K-12 or a college or a high school partner in those communities. And basically what we are doing is leveraging federal funding from National Science Foundation, Department of Labor, Department of Commerce, USDA. They have one right now for broadband and telemedicine in the rural community. So what we're hoping to do is bring in a letter of support from the City of Augusta to help us reach other communities in the Augusta area and surrounding Fort Gordon to put a number of STEM accelerators either in the K-12 environment or the high school environment where we could promote STEM learning. And so that was the purpose of reaching out to the city with this opportunity.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Doug. You might have answered one of my first questions originally, and you said that Fort Gordon is one of your target areas. And I know it's on the face of it, looked like it was more veteran oriented, and not necessarily so.
Veteran is our tier 3. And that's a good question because the problem that we've found is veterans assimilating back into the private sector after years of being in military service. They've learned the military way, but they need a little help in transitioning into the private sector and being part of the next wave of workforce that's required. So we're going to use the same model in the private sector and engaging K-12 and community college.
Okay. Well, and my next thing, so have you reached out to Fort Gordon at all? Do you know a gentleman, Tom Clark, a gentleman by the name of Tom Clark, who's the Alliance? He's the executive director for Fort Gordon Alliance. Are you familiar with him?
We haven't reached out to Fort Gordon yet. We are working back channels through Department of Defense Veterans Transition and Training. So we're working with resources in Washington, D.C. at this point.
Okay. Any other questions from my other colleagues?
I would welcome that information, though, if you have a relationship with Fort Gordon that we could start that conversation, that would be great.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that's what I'm gonna recommend, Mr. Mayor. If you don't, you had your hand up, Mr. Franklin.
Yeah, I just along those same lines, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to make sure there was a conversation with Tom Clark before we gave a letter of support. I just didn't want to do and just an understanding as well. And then, I mean, I'm happy to support it after that. I just wanted to kind of do that first if we could.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that.
That effect then?
I would reach out to them and.
I guess motion to have a conversation with Tom Clark out there with the department that he's in, and then bring it back to us, I guess, at the next committee.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Scott. And for the record, I spoke to Mr. Tom Clark this morning, and so we'll do two things. We'll ask Ms. Bonner to forward him this information here, and also we'll get this gentleman's information and get it to him so they can communicate, but they can have a conversation. We look forward to hearing back from Mr. Clark. Any closing comments, Mr. Weber?
No. Thank you for that guidance. I appreciate your input.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No.
All right. Thank you very much. Have we voted yet?
No. No.
Ms. Bonner not sleep on us, is she?
No, she's here.
All right, Ms. Bonner.
I didn't know if you were, okay, do you want to receive this as information and then we just proceed with what you're asking for? Or you want to take an official vote?
Well, what we did is made a motion to have a conversation.
To refer this to Mr. Tom Clark at Fort Gordon and bring it back at the next committee.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'm just asking if you want to just receive it as information with us doing these things.
Yes, ma'am. That'll be fine, Ms. Bonner. That's the perfect motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can we do it without objection?
Without objection. The commissioner side didn't object. We fine.
Okay. Well, I think that can, let's see. We have one item. Okay, now we need to vote on the addendum item.
Oh, that's right. Yes. The first addendum,
that's right.
the first is the administrator, bringing back a process for us.
We can drop off our guests now, can't we?
Oh, yes, sir.
What's the addendum item?
The addendum item is the one that the administrator is supposed to elaborate with himself and the attorney and HR getting together to bring us back a cleaner, smoother, clear process. I guess the language.
At the commission meeting on next Tuesday, commission meeting.
And next Tuesday.
I mean, do we need to talk about it?
We
do we need to talk about it?
No, do next administrator, do you make any comments? You got any comments, Mr. Administrator?
Yes, sir. So needed a little bit of insight here. Mr. Lewis has a slide that I would like this committee and those watching to look at about our process.
Okay.
Mr. Lewis, can you show that, please, sir?
It can't go have to wait, Mr. Bobby.
So, and I'll make this very quick, but currently the commission has a 6-part process. And so the first part of that process is once we have a director position open and we put it out there, we source and recruit interested candidates. In the past, we've used a recruiter for that, but we've also done it internally. Second, there's a preliminary assessment of qualified candidates that is usually led by the recruiter. HR is definitely in the mix of that. And then they provide notification to the administrator. And then we pass those recommendations on, or we vet them. Further, utilizing panels, subject matter experts, whatever the process might be. We then present a list of those generally qualified candidates to the commission for consideration. And then there is interviewing and vetting of those candidates by the commission with staff support, to which they are determined who is best qualified or a finalist. That is done so after we receive consent, because that process, of course, has to become public. After the determination of those finalists, then the finalists are presented to the public for review. Now, as a now insider, but former outsider of Augusta's process, I think that the process that you have is smooth and fairly direct. I think the challenge is that the presentation of the process, that nobody has ever known what that process is. And so when there's an opportunity to provide confusion, outside sources take great advantage of that. And so when looking at your process, I think what I would likely add to this 6-step process is that as sourcing and recruiting, while we release it publicly and you put it on all the sites and things of that nature, I think we likely need to simply announce at the beginning that we are utilizing, that we are beginning the process to recruit. And then this current process that we have needs to be publicly available so that folks understand that. I think it is extremely reasonable. And I think that the ordinances or the state statutes that allow for the closed interviews and vetting of potential candidates alludes to the fact that you actually have to see a candidate before you deem them best qualified or a finalist. And so this 6-step process does that, but knowing what the 6 steps are and at what point you are presenting the best qualified is something that is important for both the public as well as, it appears, some of our internal partners to be clear on.
Any questions for the administrator? Any comments?
No, I move to approve.
Yeah, just a point of clarity, just to make sure I want to state this one more time, if you would mind, Mr. Chairman. At the point of number 5, determine best qualified finalist, that is, we only release the candidates, I guess. We only release the information once. If we interview 10 people and there's 5 that are presentation to public for review, you only release the 5. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Yes, that's the legal advice that we've gotten. And again, I think even beyond that, when you look at the statute, that's kind of what it says. You have to determine who the best qualified are. And I think this process would let us know, or let the public know clearly, when you are making that decision, because there are, in some instances, hundreds of people who apply for opportunities. Others, there may be only 6 or 7, but once you have had an opportunity to vet these candidates and present them as best qualified, then it becomes a public matter so that folks have the fair opportunity to have a public review.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Administrator, can you take it down for a minute if I listen to my colleagues need to leave it up? Because I want to see the question. I want to ask the question, Commissioner, before you make the motion, if you don't.
Mr. Lewis could, I'm sorry, Commissioner, wasn't trying to interrupt, but it's not my screen. I had to let them know to take it down.
Mr. Administrator, I don't have a problem with what you presented here. I think it's very clear, but I would like you, and I don't know, maybe you have, but I just want to say it just for the record. I'd like you just to go ahead and do what the commission actually wanted you to do as a whole, if you haven't done it, and that's converse with the administrator and HR and just see if it's something that, we're going to be able to work with on the long haul. I think it's a great observation that you put up for us to take a look at. First time, even though many of us knew what it looked, in our minds, that would have looked like, we probably hadn't seen it on paper. So that's a good thing. So my thing is just to bring back next week a process that we all can live with, but I would like to see you all collaborate on those as the commission suggested yesterday. So that's what I'm hoping somebody to make that motion in doing that. Let it bring a collaborative recruiting resource by the next meeting.
Got it. Yes, sir. And are you saying at the next commission meeting or the next
You tell me.
committee?
What works best for you?
Well, so I think we can have it prepared for the next meeting. I'll defer to Mr. Brown, who's on it, but we have had some conversations about the process. But if there's more time for us to give final vetting to determine a policy or whatnot, he may need some additional time, and I would want to respect that.
See you, Commissioner Sykes. I'll get you next. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Yes, I would think the next committee cycle, we'll be able to bring something back.
Okay, and that give us a chance to look at it as well. Okay, Commissioner
Yes,
Sykes.
it'll give the commission opportunity to discuss it as well.
Commissioner
I was going
Sykes.
to say, I was going to say that exact same thing. If you bring it back to the next full commission meeting, then that's time for an approval or denial. So, but
Okay.
it still needs that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion from the bring us something back to the next committee cycle?
So moved.
I
I thought we
motion
already
to-
had it.
Second, third.
Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, that was Mr. Franum and Mr. Bobby Williams. I think Ms. Scott was trying to get in, but
Ms. Scott was first.
yeah.
Actually, I was first. If Bonnie, you ignored me, I saw that.
But sir, you're not on the committee.
I know.
He's
I owed him one.
Okay. All right, so that's Mr. Franum and Ms. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're voting now, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Ms. Bond, I think that's our committee. I think the other one was already approved for you to draft the letter. Is that correct?
For the James Brown, for the Coliseum
ma'am.
Authority?
Yes,
Or-
ma'am. I think that was it.
Yes, sir, that was done without objection.
Yes, ma'am. So that's my committee?
Yes, sir, it is.
All righty.
Your committee, huh?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna send out a note to that effect too. Oh, yeah.
Administrative services.
Yes, and everything done to the administrators.
All right, let's get engineering services underway.
Your
Okay,
committee too, huh?
Since we're claiming committees, I'll claim we get started with this one.
all right.
Are there any additions or deletions to engineering today?
No, sir, it's not.
All righty. If nobody objects, I would not be opposed to consenting items 1, 2, and 3.
Motion to
So
approve
moved.
1, 2, and 3.
Second.
Third.
All right, can we vote on that?
Yes, sir, we start with Mr. Garrett.
So you start with me because it's my committee. Is that how that works?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Son, he's the
yes, ma'am.
co-owner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Johnson is a partner.
Yes, ma'am.
And
I'm
Mr.
just here. Yes,
Knight
ma'am.
is a partner.
See what you started, Ben?
That motion carries unanimously.
Well, if there is no further
Chairman.
business,
I didn't get to vote, but is that all right?
I thought we had
I
you
mean-
down.
Oh, okay.
I
All
called your
right.
name.
I didn't vote, but no, my vote would have been to approve. Yes, consent them all.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Brandon.
Finance, Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am. Are we ready to call finance to order?
Yes, sir.
I'm in.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, are there any additions or deletions?
No, sir.
Can I get a motion to approve item 2, please?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, let's go to item 1, please.
Item 1, discuss the living wage for Augusta employees.
All right, Mayor Davis, we'll hear from you, the administrator, and then the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I appreciate everyone's time this afternoon. I'll move quickly. This is a discussion that hopefully will lead to a motion to approve making the minimum base salary of all full-time Richmond County employees $30,000. Doing preliminary research, there are approximately 350 employees that make less than $30,000, some who are making as low as $17,000 or $20,000. This early data that we have is from a report of staff salaries that we see annually. So there might be some qualifying points that finance and our HR can offer. But in our view, we should be paying all of our full-time staff a minimum of $30,000 to provide a competitive wage or a living wage. And this is just a start that barely scratches the surface for what we deem a living wage. And my goal and our goal today, I hopefully will believe, is to have the commission proceed with engaging in this conversation and getting a hard number of what this should be, and then making the adjustments as soon as possible to raise the standard of living for those who work tirelessly in the city of Augusta. They fix our streets, they clean the parks, they handle some dirty jobs, and yet they find themselves as some of our lowest paid professionals in the city of Augusta, Georgia. Over the last couple of years, we've made efforts to raise the salaries of deputies to a new base. And so it's my hope that when you look at almost 2/3 of our employees who find themselves not paid at a requisite wage, they are certainly well below the market value. The lowest paid jobs, again, in our city: maintenance workers, animal control, recreation and parks areas. And so that is the conversation today, and it oftentimes leads to high turnover. And it's my hope that as we have this conversation, we can work towards bringing our employees to a minimum and competitive salary of $30,000. And with that, I'll yield for the administrator.
All right, hold on, Commissioner Son. I see. I'm gonna go in the order I announced, okay? And then we'll come back with questions.
Yeah, so Chairman, I think that for this agenda item, I would just say that in the District of Columbia, we raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour. The same thing in South Fulton, which aligns with the 30,000. Always going to be a proponent of ensuring workers have the appropriate wage. What I will say, in those jurisdictions, you know, in DC, we did that transition over 5 years to give people the opportunity to be adjusted for, and it impacted folks outside of government. In South Fulton, we did it during the next budget cycle. We had a little bit, a smaller amount of employees that were impacted. And so I would just say, as the commission observes this, we're always in favor of making sure folks have the appropriate wage, especially a living wage. But I also think that as we're in the midst of a budget cycle, you do have to ensure that you implement something like this in the appropriate time and within the appropriate budget. And so I think the mayor's in favor of that as well, just wants to ensure that folks are funded appropriately. And so more than welcome to look at it and ensure that we identify a living wage through the budget cycle.
Thank you, Administrator. I got a couple of things I want to say about this. And as I had a discussion last night about this, and it was said that I hope my passion remains the same today. It absolutely does. But the first thing I want to say is I'm concerned when we take an hourly wage and we base an hourly wage employee and base it on an annual salary. If we're going to say that we want to take care of those folks, let's look at the hourly wage, what they're making plus benefits. Secondly, we should have career ladders within every department in this government, because we should not incentivize people
to stay at the bottom of the totem pole. If you come in as a ditch digger, you should not want to stay there for your entire career. You should be wanting to advance on your job, advance with your education opportunities, and if a better opportunity arises somewhere else, you be prepared to go to that. But I do not want to incentivize people to drop out of high school and figure they can come work for the city for I can do better digging this ditch than I can do going to school. That's not, in my view, not a good pick. So we should definitely have a career ladder for every department. We don't at this time. And with those career ladders, we should pay for those career ladders and make them not just a piece of paper, but it's something that these employees can really use to move up. We want to give people an incentive to move up. As they say in the housing thing, which they don't do, move in, move up, move out. They don't do it that way. You move in and you get stuck. I don't want to see people stuck at the bottom of the ladder with that shovel in their hand. There should be opportunities at least to become the chief shovel digger. But the bottom line, you should not be given a $50,000 salary to dig a ditch. So I'm for advancement for the folks. I mean, for a living wage, but it needs to be a whole complete package from this government. Training, opportunities, and the desire to move up and advance yourself. Commissioner Son.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the administrator a question, if you don't mind.
Right ahead.
Mr. Administrator, based on your answer about, I think you in Columbia and another jurisdiction that you mentioned, you all done some things over a period of 5 years. Based on what you see today, number one, do you see us even attacking of this problem or problem similar from a financial perspective during this budget cycle at all? Do you see us doing it? I know at one time, about a month or so ago, we talked about doing another study and a salary analysis, a salary study. So what do you recommend? And I agree with the mayor. We want to try to see what we can do, but I'm also concerned when you do a blanket 30,000, you immediately also impact person who is sitting on 30,000 and they wonder, well, I didn't get no money. I've been there longer than he or she has. Yeah. And so I no way you can avoid those things. That's part of it comes with the territory. So my real question, my basic question is this: in light of the conversation today, do you see us attacking this at all during the budget cycle? And I know we won't get to 30,000 because you're talking about a 5-year process there. But do we need to do a salary study first and consider the ones who are at the bottom of the salary study in this government?
Yeah, and so you hit that nail on the head. I want to just clarify to make sure my statement is clear. So in DC, we did a 5-year ladder because it impacted inside of government and outside of government. Anybody in the District of Columbia makes $15 an hour. They've got a totally different environment though than we have here in the South. And so I just want to highlight that. So that's why it took that long. I'm not certain, I don't think it would take 5 years for us to get folks to a living wage, but you're 100% on target. I mentioned that I believe that a class and compensation study, you haven't had one in 4 years. And at that time it was dated, because of the 3 years previous. And so what you're describing is salary compression, and that does become an issue if you only address the folks at the bottom. And so again, I think through the this budget process, we will have an opportunity to evaluate folks at the lowest rung of our current class and compensation scale. And then it is my intent, and I think I've said that fairly publicly, to present to the commission as a part of the budget, a class and compensation study that makes sure that government is right-sized and you don't have these one-off salary compression issues. So I do believe that we can manage it. I think the mayor alluded to, we have corrected some of those challenges this year already, and we're in the process of managing that throughout the year. But the simplest time to make any changes effective are always going to be when you pass your final budget. And so in between now and that time, I think we can begin to address this. And during the budget hearings and everything else, is when we can provide to the commission, have we brought everyone to a living wage, or will we need to leverage this class and compensation study to do so?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator, as well. But I want to say this. Remember, we have our budget workshop coming up, and this
That's
is
right.
where we are supposed to really emphasize these kinds of things and how we want to incorporate them. But for me to support any kind of changes like this, Mr. Administrator, we're gonna have to have some kind of career ladder process in place.
That's right.
Be working on it, because when you said about salary compression, if that was a ladder, you wouldn't run into that. Because see, and so we don't have that incentive process in place, and just to throw money at the problem don't necessarily fix it. So because if you move the bottom up, you got to move the middle up.
That's right.
So the bottom line is, I think this is a great time for consideration of this, but the immediate action on this, any immediate action should come after we have our budget workshop.
I would agree with that, sir. Chairman, I would say you could still create if you put a career ladder in place, you can still experience compression issues. I just want to make sure I highlight that. But I'll tell you, I'm looking at the plaque right now. When I was in DC, we developed what we called Academy DC that helped to create that ladder and give people a credential that is only accepted by the government, that ensured their career ladder and progression. They're still utilizing it to this day. But you can have compression issues, and that's why I am very strongly advising the commission that as we look at next year's budget, we do a comprehensive assessment. I think the last assessment that you did only looked at the dollar amounts, like you mentioned. It did not include the career ladder and those other things. So I fully agree with you. Once you guys set your priorities at the budget retreat, it'll help guide these conversations, and we probably shouldn't approve things until that time. But I also don't want to give false expectations.
And I agree. And Administrator, I think it's also very prudent that you don't have to wait to start working on the career ladder process either.
Right.
So I think that needs to be a comprehensive look throughout the department. And as I know, the law department, they were at one point struggling to create a career ladder, and I think it got done, and hopefully it's still working. But the point is, I got you, Commissioner McKnight. You can go ahead. We can go ahead and get that piece rolling, and so that we don't just throw money at it, but we throw a process at it so people can move in and move up and keep moving up. Commissioner McKnight.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in a little 2 cents here about what the mayor said, going back to the very get-go, what he presented. I'm in agreement with him on this, and the reason being is we do have a lot of employees out there, and I know what we're saying about throwing money in, but when you get paid a very little bit of money, you know, sometimes when you get a little raise, it makes people want to work even harder. So I'm in favor of doing this workshop as we're going to do and discussing it, but I just wanted to let you know, put it out there that I agree with Mayor Davis that we do need to work on giving our employees a little bit more a raise.
Let me make one thing. Okay, you done?
Oh, yeah.
Let me make one thing crystal clear. I did not say to folks you can get a raise. I said we should have that a process to ensure that we have a path forward for them to move up and continue to move up. Are there any more comments or questions?
No, sir.
At this time, can I get a motion to accept this as information right now?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Can we do it without objection? Are there objections, sir? So we can.
Can we do it without the objection?
No.
No objection, Ms. Bonner.
Thank you, sir.
That concludes finance.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to call public safety to order. Are there any additions or deletions? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, sir. I do believe we have a request for 3 additions. That information.
Okay. Is there any objection to the addition? I can't find it.
Oh, okay.
The-
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
You need that back sent to you?
I think so. I thought I had it. Oh, no, I don't. I have it. I have it.
Okay. Hold on just a moment for me. Okay, well, are you gonna add, we're at the point to add those, the
Yes.
addendum items?
If there's no objection, we would add it.
Okay, all right.
Now, can we?
any.
No. Madam Clerk, can we read all 3 and just vote one time, or do we have to individually vote?
No, sir, you can do them as companion items and form a consent agenda of these items. That would include the minutes as well.
Okay.
Okay,
Is there any
all right.
concern
So,
or interest from?
Let me read these for the record that we're adding. Item 1, assign honorary road name of Captain H.R. Elam to Walters Court. Assign the honorary road name of Springfield Way to the 100 block of 12th Street. Assigning the honorary road name of Murray Lane to a segment of Helen Street.
Are there any
So-
questions?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. we sent
Commissioner,
it. Hold on this.
Yeah. Who requested the item for Captain or Mr. Elam? I could see the other 2, but who was the requester for that item?
Mr. Chairman, can I address that one?
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay, from my understanding, items 1 and 2 were requested by former Commissioner William Fenoy, Bill Fenoy, and that was done prior to him leaving the commission. So, but there's been a stalwart in that, and I don't understand, but however, it's been there. And
But it was one that didn't have a requester name on it. It seemed like he came from IT.
Is
they
that
put
the?
their name on it. They put their name, well, apparently they put their name on it, but both items 1 and 2 were requested by former Commissioner Bill Fenoy before he left the commission.
Okay.
I would just want to know that particular piece. I don't object to it, I guess, but it seems as if IT made the request.
Yes, sir. I don't know why that was done that way. I don't. I can provide you, if you'd like, communications that have been between former Commissioner Fenoy and IT over the last few months.
Is there any additional questions or concerns? What is your pleasure?
So it would be a consent agenda of the 3 items and the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the
I
minute.
made a motion to approve. Motion to approve.
So,
Been moved in second. All in favor say aye. Oh, we don't have to do that. do we?
Wait
No,
a
we
minute.
don't have-
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
we're sitting there-
Commissioner McKnight is not on that committee.
We're not even on the committee, but I don't see anybody else there. Do y'all got a quorum?
That don't work. That don't work that way.
I
would-
know it doesn't. I know it
Oh,
doesn't.
Brandon, you don't have a quorum. You don't have
No,
a quorum.
no.
Brandon's not here. John's not here. We don't have a quorum.
We'll postpone
Brandon's
these
not here.
items.
John's not here.
We'll postpone it to the next meeting.
Hey,
Correct, Ms. Bonner?
hey,
Yes,
I got
sir,
a good
I got
idea, Commissioner Williams. Why don't we postpone it to the next meeting?
I believe that's what, ask Ms. Bonner to confirm that, I can.
Or you can send them on without a recommendation.
So,
It's well, I don't even have a committee, so we'll just hold off to next week. Okay?
Yeah, yeah, because I don't want to make a non-consent agenda any longer than it has to be.
Madam Clerk, that concludes public safety.
Thank you. Good meeting, Mr. Chairman.
come in, and Ms. Bond. Ms.
Yes,
Bonner,
yes,
may I
ma'am.
ask, I wanted to ask real quick, and Mayor Pro Tem, so the 3 items for the honorary names will go back on, you mean in 2 weeks or what, right?
In 2 weeks, in 2 weeks.
Okay, all right, done. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody have a pleasant evening.
Y'all too.
Enjoy what you can.
Yes, sir. You too. Thank you.
Your committee over public safety.
So that's what I.
Boy. Commissioner Weeds.